Thank you for joining us today as we play a fun game of Squid Games in Roblox. We're going to tell a fun story about Bobcat and his friends and family and his strength and his life and what the game of Squid Game meant to him and his friends. Please stick around and enjoy this awesome tale of adventure, the games we survive, the story of Bobcat, and the unbreakable bond. In a world where desperation could be twisted into entertainment, the Squid Games had become a legend, whispered about in alleyways and online forums. The rules were cruel, the games deadly, but the prize was life-changing. For a tight-knit group of friends who'd grown up together in the fractured neighborhoods of East Ridge, the games weren't just a rumor, they were real, and one day, they were chosen. Through the cocktail. There were 5 of them. Bobcat, quiet, resilient, and calm under pressure. The others never knew his real name, but his nickname came from how stealthily he moved and how protective he was of his group, like a wildcat in the night. Maya, sharp-tongued, brilliant, and tough as nails. She had a background in martial arts and a soft spot for old jazz records. Theo, the Joker, always cracking jokes at the worst times. His humor was his shield, but his heart was pure. Jin, quiet and thoughtful, always observing, always planning. He was the brain of the group. Arya, the heart. She was the one who made sure no one gave up, even when everything seemed hopeless. They weren't perfect. They argued, got on each other's nerves, and sometimes questioned why they were even still friends, but they were family. Bobcat's past, the boy from the sea. Bobcat's strength came from pain. When he was only 10, he and his family boarded a cruise ship, a rare vacation gifted to them after years of saving. It was a dream come true. His mother loved the ocean. His father told jokes over dinner, and his little sister had a laugh like wind chimes. But on the 3rd night, something changed. The sky turned black, the sea roared, then silence. The ship vanished into the Bermuda Triangle. Bobcat was the only survivor, found days later on a lifeboat, clinging to a stuffed bear his sister had given him. The trauma etched itself into his soul, but it also gave him an unshakable will to survive. He never wanted to lose anyone again. Welcome to the games. The 5 friends were abducted at night, blindfolded, and brought to a concrete facility beneath ground. When the lights came on, they were met with hundreds of others, all chosen for one reason or another. A loud voice echoed through the chamber. You will compete. The prize is wealth, freedom, and a second chance. But fail, and you lose everything. The first game was red light, green light, a deceptively innocent game turned into a killing field. Shots rang out. Screams filled the air. But the 5 friends held on, yelling to each other across the field, warning, guiding, pushing each other forward. By the skin of their teeth, they made it. The trials. Each game that followed tore at their bodies, their minds, and their friendships. There were times they wanted to quit. When Theo almost fell from the glass bridge, Bobcat grabbed him by the wrist and shouted, "I've lost enough people in my life. Not you, too." In one game, the tug of war, they were matched against a stronger team. It was Maya's idea to lean back at the same time, creating a surge of balance. Jin calculated the rhythm. Arya kept the team together emotionally. Bobcat anchored them at the end, digging his feet in like a tree in a storm. They won, but not all of them made it. The losses. In the marble game, contestants were paired against each other. It was cruel, personal. Friends were forced to choose. Jin and Theo were matched up. They tried to beat the system, but there was no loophole. Theo, who had once said, "I'm too funny to die," handed his marbles to Jin with a wink and said, "Tell Maya I would have married her if we made it out of here." He walked away before anyone could stop him. They never saw him again. Later, in the Hall of Blades, Maya was cut badly trying to protect Arya. She bled out in Bobcat's arms, gripping his hand. "You're gonna live, Bobcat," she whispered, "for all of us." He cried for the first time since the ship. The final game. It came down to Bobcat, Arya, and Jin. Only one could win. They sat together in a cell the night before the final game. No one slept. They just talked about home, about Theo's dumb jokes, about Maya's constant humming. Jin said, "Whatever happens tomorrow, I love you both." They promised to try, but in the final game, a brutal variation of Squid Game, only Arya made it through. Bobcat was injured, protecting her from a brutal tackle. As she crossed the final line, screaming in triumph and heartbreak, she looked back and saw Bobcat on his knees, smiling. "You made it," he said. "That's enough." The life after Bobcat survived. Barely. Arya gave up part of her winnings to get him the medical care he needed. Jin, too, had been spared. He had collapsed from exhaustion and was disqualified, but allowed to live. No one knew why. The games were over, but the bond they had forged in blood, sweat, tears, and unimaginable terror that never ended. They moved in together in a quiet house by a lake. Bobcat would sometimes stare at the water for hours, but he wasn't haunted anymore. He had found another family, one forged not by blood, but by battle. They opened a small cafe called Theo's, named after their fallen friend. The walls were lined with photos, drawings, and mementos from their journey. Customers came for the coffee, but stayed for the warmth. No one who walked in ever guessed the smiling baristas had once survived the world's deadliest game. Epilog. Bobcat never won the Squid Game, but he found something greater than money. He found purpose. He found healing. He found people who would stand by him no matter what. And in a world built on survival and cruelty, they proved that love, friendship, and loyalty were still the strongest forces of all. The end.
Woo!